Start like we normally do. We're going to go through our vocabulary. I'm going to talk about our state standard, our learning goal like we did last time. After that, we're going to go through a little mini lecture. After that lecture, in the middle, I'm going to ask you guys a question. You guys are going to discuss the question of the different policies that we discuss. You guys will know all about it because you guys are fantastic students. After that, we will begin going into our end of class time. During our end of class time, you guys will be working with a partner to answer 3 questions on Google Classroom. Okay, you guys are very skilled in using your Chromebooks and computers. Unfortunately, the Wi-Fi is not always very skilled in room 506. If the Wi-Fi is not cooperating, we need to give it a second. Periods 1 and 3 also had a little problems, then got into the swing of things after we gave it a minute. Okay, so that's how class is going to work today. We're going to start class right now by getting out our notes. But before we do, while you're doing that, getting out your notes, looks like most of you already have it out. How's school going today, class? Hello, how can I help you?
I was wondering if I'd be able to sit with you for the period.
We're videotaping for a video. If you want to stay, you can stay. If not, you cannot stay, or whatever you want to do. So would you like to, you can sit over there, but I'm not sure where you'd sit. Oh, we got 5 bags of chips. Matthew McCackern's locked in. Okay, question, yes. Sure. Okay, pass that back, please. Okay, so right now, please get out your notes. Most of you have it out. Okay, I asked class before we got interrupted, how's everybody's day going today? How's school? Good? You got your Spanish grade? Did we do well on our Spanish test?
Yeah, I got an 86%.
Got 86%. Okay, very good. How's everybody? Yes, what else? You failed your biology test. Did you properly prepare yourself for that biology test? No, that's not true. Don't say that about yourself. You just got to prepare a little differently in the future. How's everybody doing over here? I heard a little Pico de Gallo exploded earlier.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Spilled your burrito all over yourself?
Yeah, I did in the morning.
Okay. That's an academic weapon right there. Okay. Okay, so right now let's get started. Get the projector going, get class started. Okay. We're making a little adjustment to the notes. We're going to skip one of the slides we have planned. I feel like it's in our best interest to move past it. Okay, so number 1 and 2 on your Iron Curtain notes, you guys can cross out right now. Okay, cross those out right now as we begin class. Number 1, number 2 on the Iron Curtain notes. Okay, it should say Iron Curtain at the top. You're on the wrong page. And make sure we get to the Iron Curtain. Yep, cross out number 1 and 2. Okay, we're skipping that whole slide. Okay. Okay, class. Today we're going to be working off California State Standard 10.9.3. We're going to understand the importance of the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan, which established the pattern for America's post-war policy of supplying economic and military aid to prevent the spread of communism and the resulting economic and political competition in arenas such as Southeast Asia, i.e. the Korean War, Vietnam War, Cuba, and Africa. Okay? Okay, so today in class we're going to be thoroughly analyzing the Marshall Plan and the Truman Doctrine, talking about how that set the foundation for future patterns. Okay? Our learning goal, by the end of the lesson, you guys, the students, will be able to analyze the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan to determine if the policies were in the best interest of preserving democracy. Okay? So we're looking at this from the perspective of the United States. Okay? We're going to see if the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan were in the best interest of preserving democracy in the United States. Okay? Any questions about the learning goal before we begin? Okay, no questions? Okay, let's get into our vocab. Let's do a little ALD, academic language development. Okay, today, our first vocabulary preview. You guys should be writing this down. Our first word of the day we're going to be talking about is the Iron Curtain. Okay? The Iron Curtain was Europe's division into mostly democratic Western Europe and communist Eastern Europe. Okay? The second thing we're going to talk about is containment. Okay, containment is a policy directed at blocking Soviet influence and stopping the expansion of communism. Okay. Last word for today is Truman Doctrine. Okay? The Truman Doctrine was President Truman's policy of supporting countries that were fighting a communist takeover. The fourth and last thing we'll talk about today in class is the Marshall Plan. Okay, the Marshall Plan was an assistance program to provide food, machinery, and other materials to rebuild Western Europe. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about any of our words? Anybody need any clarification about any of these words mean? Okay. Are we ready to move on? Very cool. So we're going to go right to the Potsdam Conference. This is review from what we talked about yesterday. Yesterday we ended with the Potsdam Conference. We're going to start refreshing your heads. Okay, yesterday we talked about Yalta. Today we'll start talking about Potsdam Conference. Okay, the Potsdam Conference is the first time we see the new Big Three. Okay? The new Big Three consists of President Harry Truman, Clement Attlee, and Joseph Stalin, of course. Okay? Truman replaced President Roosevelt, who died of a stroke in April of 1945. Okay? Now, why is this significant? Truman was supposed to be mentored by Churchill at the Potsdam Conference until Churchill loses the popular election in 1945 to be replaced by Clement Attlee. So all of a sudden, at the Potsdam Conference, we have two rookies essentially going up against Joseph Stalin, negotiating what would happen in the post-war world, as well as what they're going to do about the war in Japan. As discussed yesterday at the Potsdam Conference, at the Yalta Conference, Stalin agrees to help the Americans fight the Japanese in Japan. But this is a secret deal that he makes with FDR. This is not well known, this is not documented. So unfortunately, after he's dead, Truman doesn't know about this deal. So Truman tells Stalin that, hey man, you help fight with us, we will give you land in Asia. After talking about that yesterday, we know on August 6th, we dropped the first atomic bomb at Hiroshima. On August 7th, what does Joseph Stalin do?
Attack.
He attacks where?
Man.
He attacks Manchuria. Very good. Now, why does he attack Manchuria? What is he trying to get for himself? He's trying to get land in Asia. So all of a sudden, August 7th, he attacks. August 9th, we drop the second atomic bomb. Flash forward to September 2nd. September 2nd, the Japanese officially surrender. The war's over. Now the war's over, we have to give some form of land in Asia to the Russians. What land do we give them? We give them North Korea. Very good. Okay, prior to that point in time, North Korea had been insignificant in history. We thought it would be a good place for us to give to the Russians because what's between North Korea and Russia? What country? China. Okay, China's right there. As China's right there, are we supporting the nationalists to help win the Civil War? Yes, we're helping them win the Civil War. We think, okay, as long as the nationalists win the Civil War, we'll be fine. Okay, what ends up happening? Who ends up winning that war? Okay, the communists win the war. All of a sudden, now we have this big connection of communist countries along with Eastern Europe being communist. Now, oh my gosh, it's so scary. All resulting back from the Potsdam Conference. Okay, any questions about what resulted and happened at the Potsdam Conference and the long-term result? Okay, let's go to our notes. Number one, why did the Soviet Union want to let's go to number three. How did the Big Three change between the Yalta and Potsdam Conference? Okay, how did it change? Oh, thank you, ma'am. How's your day today? Very good, Aiden. Okay. Okay, how did the Big Three change between Yalta, which was the original Big Three, to the Potsdam Conference? Okay. Truman replaced Roosevelt after Roosevelt's death, and Clement Attlee replaced Winston Churchill after he won the general election in the UK. Okay. So we have a new Big Three. So how does it change? Truman replaces FDR after his death, and Attlee replaces Churchill after winning the general election in the UK. Okay, number four. How did Stalin change his rhetoric towards the West after the end of World War II? In 1946, the war has been over in Japan and in Germany. Stalin comes out and makes a statement saying that communism and capitalism cannot coexist in the same world. So as Joseph Stalin, the leader of the Communist Party, says this, what does he now declare to the world? Okay, we can't coexist. one of us is going to end up being alone. One side has to win. Okay, so how did Joseph Stalin change his rhetoric towards the West after the war? They go from being allies to him now saying that communism and capitalism cannot coexist. Any questions so far? Okay, you ready to move on? Brooklyn, you look confused. You have a question? No?
Wait, could you repeat it?
Yes. Number 4. How did Joseph Stalin change his rhetoric towards the West after the end of the war? Joseph Stalin declares that communism and capitalism cannot coexist in the same world. Okay. So how does it change? They go from being allies to now he says we can't coexist. Make sense? How those chips taste? Worth $1.30? $1.25. Ooh, saving 5 cents. We're feeling nicey. Okay, we ready to move on? Mr. Toppy, did your parents tell you that I saw them at the store last night? No? Aw, it's a shame. We had a great conversation. Yeah, so I walked by. I said, "How you doing, Mr. Toppy?" And she said, "How do I know you?" And I said, "I teach your son 4th period." He says, "Nice." And I went up to her. Yeah. He said your 4th period teacher is the best, huh? Yeah, thank you. Okay, moving on. Now we get to the Iron Curtain. After World War II, Europe has now been divided between the mostly democratic Western Europe and communist Eastern Europe. Okay, so here's basically how it works. We talked about this yesterday. Eastern Europe has basically been gone from the edge. The border of Poland will be moved. All of this is now part of Eastern Europe, working towards becoming communist. Remember, we talked the Russians went down all the way to the very bottom, towards the top, to make sure they conquered as much ground as possible, while the Allies came from Italy and France and captured all that land up towards Germany. Okay? So, the Iron Curtain, which we did on our map assignment yesterday, where we drew the black line between the countries, is the Iron Curtain. Now, where does the name Iron Curtain come from? In 1946, Winston Churchill described the ideological separation of Europe as the Iron Curtain in his famous speech. Germany would be divided into 2 sections, with the Soviets controlling the eastern part, including half of Berlin, and the western half would become the Federal Republic of Germany with a democratic government. Okay, so yesterday we talked at Yalta. The country split up into 4 sections. Germany split into 4 sections. All of a sudden, those 4 sections are now split because the United States, France, and Britain come together to combine theirs. But the USSR says, we're not ready to combine, we're not going to combine. So they split the country again into West Germany and East Germany. Just like they did before, there's still one road into West Berlin, and there's a railroad that goes right through about right there. So there's 2 ways still in. So the country's now been split into East and West Germany after the formation of the Allies combining their 3 occupied zones. Okay. So as this happens, this upsets Stalin, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So we'll stop right there, and we'll go back to that in a little bit. Okay. The physical separation of Europe was completed during the first 5 years of the Cold War. Okay. So the main reason why Joseph Stalin creates the Iron Curtain is because he wants a buffer zone. 2 times in the 20th century, Russia, the country, was invaded. He says to himself, if we could create our border, essentially being way over here at the border of Germany and Poland, that we have all this zone for us to be able to repel an invasion and not have our country ruined. Okay? How was fighting in Russia like when they were fighting the Nazis? It was cold. Cities were destroyed. A bunch of death. They thought to themselves, if we create this buffer zone, we could have basically a cushion for us to be able to stop an invasion rather than having our country fought upon. Make sense? Okay. Let's go to our notes. Number 5. What does the phrase Iron Curtain describe? Carla, hello, how can I help? You bring me a birthday cake?
Not yet. I have a question. What would you do if someone threw a shoe on the roof on accident? Not me. I don't have my shoes. But like, how would you get it back?
How'd you?
Yeah.
So, funny enough, as a campus supervisor prior, only district people, or there's only a certain amount of people from the district that can go up on the roof, and we don't have any that work at Troy High School. So they have to call somebody to come to our school to get that shoe.
You're
So
tapping. That's your lying face.
No,
Yeah,
swear to God.
No, I actually.
Swear, I promise you. They have to call somebody from the district that's been trained to get up on the roof, because if they have somebody untrained, like if Mr. Madrid wanted to get up on the roof, Mr. Madrid falls, breaks his back, he can now sue the district saying, I wasn't properly trained to get up on the roof.
Oh, Mr. Madrid did for us, huh?
Mr. Madrid's a supplemental, but I don't think he wants to break his back.
That was a good. I'll be right back. I'm gonna just go talk to someone.
Good,
I'll
Tyler.
let them know.
Is your shoe up on the roof?
Her shoe.
What kind of shoe is it?
A Birkenstock.
Oh no! The Birkenstocks!
She thought it was funny to walk around and go like that, but she did like. She really like her dog.
Okay, Diego, give her your slides. Okay, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
Mr. Madrid, I just saw you.
We're actually filming a thing for the state of California.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
You're okay, Carla. I wish you the best in getting your shoe back.
Thank you so much. Have an amazing lesson.
Thank you, Carla. My twinning it won't help. Yes, you may. Okay, let's go back to our notes. Okay, what does the phrase iron... Hey, class, I know we got interrupted. We have to get back on topic. Okay, let's see, number 5. What does the phrase Iron Curtain describe? Okay, the Iron Curtain describes the separation of Europe. Okay, it describes the separation of Europe between Western Europe and communist Eastern Europe. Okay, describes the Dude, what'd you do to your freaking packet, yo? Get a little bored? Okay. Okay, second part, number 5. Who coined the term Iron Curtain? Somebody tell me. Winston Churchill. Very good. Okay, Winston Churchill coined the term in 1946. Number 6. Why did the Soviets want to establish the Iron Curtain across Europe? What were they trying to do?
Buffer zone.
Yeah, create a buffer zone. Basically have a cushion where they could have an invasion happen and it wouldn't be inside their country of Russia. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
What's the first part of number 5?
First part of number 5. What does the phrase Iron Curtain mean? It means the separation of Europe. Okay, it's the separation of Europe. Between West Europe and communist East Europe. Okay? Any questions about the Iron Curtain before we move on? Okay. Okay. Relationships between the United States and the USSR worsened throughout 1946 and 1947, and the U.S. tried to counter the Soviet influence in Eastern Europe. President Truman adopted a policy of containment, bless you, in which the United States tried to blockade Soviet influence and the spread of communism. Okay? George Kennan comes up with this idea that we have to keep communism contained. We can't let it spread. A very wise man, I was talking to him the other day, and he gave me this great analogy for how you could think of containing communism.
Was it yourself?
No, much more tall, much more bow-legged man. Okay. So we're sitting there talking. As we're talking, he goes, okay, the first 2 countries the United States has the opportunity to contain communism is in Turkey and Greece. Okay, in Turkey, they wanted to come in, they wanted the Dardanelles, they wanted that passage. In Greece, they had a communist rebellion happening. So this is the first time we have the opportunity to contain communism. So he said, think about it. You're at Thanksgiving. You put your turkey inside of a big metal plate and a big metal tray. You put it in the oven. As you take your turkey out of the oven, is there a bunch of grease and juice at the bottom of the tray?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you have a turkey, you have some grease. Okay, imagine you spill a little bit on the floor. Can you slip on that grease?
Yes.
So if you slip, you could fall right into communism. So you have Turkey and Greece in a tray. You have your tray to contain all that stuff in the tray. If you spill a little bit, all of a sudden you're not containing it. Can you slip and fall into communism?
Sir.
Yes. Oh. Jeff. Bow-legged. Bow-legged means your legs are it's like that. It's bow-legged right there.
Like a pickle?
Like a pit bull. Yes. Yes. You may use the restroom. Okay.
Smart man.
That's containment. Okay, the United States containment. The United States would form alliances and help weak countries resist communism. Okay, so we basically sought out countries we thought we could build a relationship with to help contain communism. Yes, matter of fact. Stand up. Not bad, maybe a little bit. Stand up tall. Oh, it got worse. Don't stand up tall. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Okay. Number 7. What is the purpose of containment? Okay, the purpose of containment is to counter the Soviet influence in Eastern Europe. Okay, the purpose of containment is to counter the Soviet influence in Eastern Europe. Got that written down? Okay, to counter the Soviet influence in Eastern Europe. Okay. Second part. Who came up with the idea of containment? Somebody tell me. George F. Kennan. Okay, George F. Kennan. Okay, any questions about containment? We understand how we take our turkey out on Thanksgiving. If we spill a little bit of our grease on the floor, we could slip into communism if we don't contain it. Yes?
What was the first part?
First part of what?
What is the purpose of containment?
What's the purpose of containment? The purpose of containment is to counter the Soviet influence in Eastern Europe. Okay, number 8. How did the United States try to counter the influence of the Soviet Union around the world? The United States would form alliances and help weak countries resist communist threats. Okay, the United States would form alliances and help weak countries resist communist threats. Can we throw that away for you?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any questions about containment? Anything we're confused? Yes, ma'am. Number 8. Okay, number 8. How did the United States try to counter the influence of the Soviet Union around the world? The United States would form alliances and help weak countries to resist communist threats. Okay. Okay. Now we get into the actual policy that comes with containment. Turkey and Greece both faced pressure from the Soviet Union and communist threats during the late 1940s. Turkey was being pressured by the Soviet Union, which wanted access to the Dardanelles, and Greece was fighting a communist rebellion. In a speech to Congress for foreign aid, President Truman outlined the basis of what would become known as the Truman Doctrine. Under the Truman Doctrine, the United States would provide military and economic aid to any nations facing a communist threat or takeover. Okay, so we see the first time the Truman Doctrine's in effect is we actually send military aid to Turkey and Greece. The United States Army bails out Turkey and Greece by having military force show up to fight this. Okay, now here's the thing. The Truman Doctrine basically says if there is a threat of communism spreading and taking over a country, we, the United States, are going to intervene. What are some examples of this? We will talk about these in the coming days. The Korean War. We talked about how the Korean War starts to happen. As South Korea starts to invade North Korea, we have our army already in the Pacific in Japan rebuilding. We just simply send them over to South Korea to push back the North Koreans. In Vietnam, the French end up losing to the Viet Cong, so we see they hold an election. The election results we don't like. Communism starts to spread, so we send our army over there to start fighting. Make sense? Okay, so the Truman Doctrine basically says, if there's any issues, we are willing to send our military, send money, anything we can to help stop the spread of communism. Any questions about the Truman Doctrine? Sir?
Are they allowed to do that? Because they're going to like a different country.
So this is, from my understanding, this is an approved policy where this became like standard practice. It basically gave us the permission needed for us to use military force. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So we go to number 9. What challenges were facing Turkey and Greece by the late 1940s? Okay. Turkey was being pressured by the Soviet Union, which wanted access through the Dardanelles, and Greece was fighting a communist rebellion. So this is March 1947 when the Truman Doctrine. Yes, sir. You may. Make sure you sign out. Get out your phone scan, sir. Okay. What were the challenges Turkey and Greece were facing? Turkey was being pressured by the Soviet Union, which wanted access to the Dardanelles, and Greece was fighting a communist rebellion. Okay. Number 10, how would the United States assist other nations under the Truman Doctrine? Okay. Under the Truman Doctrine, the United States would provide military and economic aid to any nation facing a communist takeover threat. Now, many people argue, was the Truman Doctrine in the best interest of democracy, or was it the United States simply intervening in other countries' problems in their best interest? Okay, so a lot of people argue. If you're looking at it from our perspective and from the results, most people will say the Truman Doctrine probably wasn't the best thing for the United States. A lot of people didn't like the Vietnam War. Not a lot of people liked the Korean War. Okay, so if you ask our master teacher, Mr. Madrid, he fought in Vietnam back in the day in his 62nd birthday. So if you ask him, he'll tell you some stories about what it was like. Okay.
Wow.
Okay, are we ready to move on to the Marshall Plan? Okay. Marshall Plan. After World War II, most of Western Europe lay in ruins and economic turmoil was rift with the lack of jobs and food. So in 1947, United States Secretary of State George Marshall proposed that the United States give aid to needy countries under a new assistance program. Okay. This was simple. This is a simple idea. What kind of conditions are in communist countries for them to turn to communism? Or I should say, what kind of situations are in countries that would eventually turn to communism? Do you guys remember what conditions were like in Russia before the communist revolution? Terrible. There's ruins, famine, all these people are out of work. So the United States came up with the idea, if we give them a bunch of money for their government to be able to provide protection and loyalty, in return there won't be a communist rebellion. So we started giving countries all kinds of money. We offered it to everybody. We even called up Joseph Stalin in the USSR and said, hey, big guy, I know you sound like Mickey Mouse, but if you guys want some money, we'll be willing to give you a bunch of money to help you out. We even called up all the countries of Eastern Europe and said, hey, we'd love to give you some of this American greenbacks, get you back on track. Here's the thing, Joseph Stalin let none of those countries in Eastern Europe or the USSR accept any American money. Now think, why would he not allow these people to accept American money? What does it show? Show they're weak. It shows that communism is not successful enough to support its own people. They have to accept the American money? Capitalist America? Ew, we can't accept their money. So as a result, the Americans now provide food, machinery, and other materials to Western nations, or Western European nations, in order to rebuild their economic and infrastructure. Congress approved over $13.3 billion to aid Europe. In connection today, I believe it's about $127 billion today. We gave all kinds of money to help these countries rebuild. The Marshall Plan helped European countries rebuild and dwindled the allure of communism in Western Europe. Hey, do we know what allure means?
No, what does that mean?
Allure basically, great job. Okay, allure basically means the attraction. Okay, we talked about what kind of conditions have to be present for communism to take over. We wanted to get rid of those conditions so people are not interested in communism. Make sense? Okay. Number 11. How did the United States hope the Marshall Plan would counter the growth of communism in Western Europe? Okay, the United States planned that European countries would rebuild and dwindle the allure of communism in Western Europe. So we hope the Marshall Plan would help European countries rebuild and dwindle the allure of communism in Western Europe. Okay, so how do we think the United States would help stop the spread of communism? We hope that we hope the Marshall Plan would help European countries rebuild and dwindle the allure of communism in Western Europe. Okay. Right now, you guys are going to have about a 5-minute time to discuss with your partner sitting next to you, your elbow partner to your right. Okay, if you're on the left side, to your left. Okay, you guys are going to talk and discuss the differences between the Marshall Plan and the Truman Doctrine, and the differences that the United States aim for both of them. Okay? Any questions? So right now, feel free to discuss amongst your partner. I'll be walking around to ask any questions and make sure that we're on the right track of learning. Okay? Right now, make sure you're discussing. You have your notes to help you. Maybe you not have a partner? Okay, you need to make sure we have a partner. So right now, since you don't have a partner, you can go back over there and work with Caleb for the next 5 minutes, okay? Okay, so we're discussing it. Okay, you're discussing Hey boys, do you think it was in the best interest of the United States democracy for them for the Truman Doctrine to put in place for them to militarily intervene in countries? You don't think so? Why don't you think so? You think that American lives should be put in danger? The building's better. I ask you mine. So you think the Marshall Plan is better than the Truman Doctrine?
Could you also say that the U.S. public
served in the war.
So you guys did all that just all that just to get
Okay, we can break down. So basically, ensure democracy means that we wouldn't be able to establish have those things in the United States. We didn't have this plan. So basically, that we didn't go fight the war. The United States we'll talk a little more about it here in a little bit. Most take it that the adoption really sensitive. That's why we'll see the recurring patterns that have results in trade doctrine next couple of days. Okay, class, it's starting to get quiet in here, so I'm not sure. Are we done discussing? Does everybody have their opinion? Okay. Okay, let's discuss about right now. Okay, class, let me ask you. Do you guys think the Truman Plan was essential in securing democracy, or do you think it was the United States intervening in other countries' problems? Just a little bit? Okay, why do we think they intervened? What reasons do we think that it was not necessary for democracy? Yes?
Because they said they'll bring up their troops to protect those people, which means it could have started like a war or something.
So we already talked about them already fighting. So we actually had fighting in Turkey and Greece. So we already have the Truman Doctrine with us actually fighting. So we think it's better for us to provide money rather than for us to militarily involve in countries. Oh, we went to the restroom and got a bag of chips. Love how that could happen. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, let me ask you a different question. Do you guys think the money we invested was worth spending, or do you think that money could have been better spent letting them figure out their problems and the United States does their thing?
Yeah.
So?
Yeah. Like, if you have, like, excess money for a war, you know, just spend it.
Spend it? What are we going to spend it?
Like, if you win the lottery, are you just gonna let it sit there? Like, I spend it.
Well,
Hear me out.
Okay.
Hear me out. Invest in other countries, because, you know, they might have, like, oil, and then you could sell the oil.
Okay. I don't know if we could put financial investments in other countries. That's kind of our government. But, okay, I like what we're thinking. Okay, class, last slide for today. Last slide for today. We're going to talk about the Berlin airlift. Okay, the Berlin airlift. We talked earlier about how we have the separation, for those of you over here, between East Germany and West Germany. We also split Berlin right down the middle, where now we have West and East Berlin. Yes, that is exactly what it is. Mr. Madrid has a piece of the Berlin Wall over here. This historic piece of wall right here is from the Berlin Wall. Wow. If we do well in the next test, you all can hold, I promise. Okay. So, okay, focus, class, focus. They create the Berlin Wall to separate the two and make sure people from East Berlin cannot go to West Berlin. There's guards, there are lights, there's all these things, barbed wire on the top to ensure people can't jump the wall and go into West Berlin.
So it's just like a border.
Basically like a border. Yes?
How does one acquire a piece of the Berlin?
You could ask Mr. Madrid after class. Okay? So as this is happening, we have the two country or the two parts of the city split. As we have the United States form with France and Britain, we combine the three. Stalin gets upset about this, and he decides, I'm closing the roads. You people cannot go visit West Berlin. We're basically going to make these people stay here. On top of that, after closing the roads, the sewage treatment plant and the power plant are on the East German side of the border. So all of a sudden, he shuts off the power. He shuts off the sewage. And these people are basically stuck without power, without a way to get out.
They're gonna die.
And there's sewage problems. They're going to die. What do we think Stalin's trying to do?
Sneak them out.
Do you think Stalin wants to take over West Berlin to have communism all inside there? Get all those democratic people out? Yeah. So once again, we see the spread of communism, and the United States acts on this. The United States comes up with a plan over 11 months of having daily flights of flying supplies and goods into West Berlin to keep them supplied. Now, there was, right on the border of West Berlin, there was an airfield. And as these pilots would fly in every day, there was one pilot that became known as the Candy Bomber. The Candy Bomber would open up his window, and as he's about to land, start tossing candy bars out the window. And over time, as he's tossing these candy bars out the window, groups of kids start to surround where he's flying and landing, and more kids start to come and come. And as more people are there, Hershey's starts to hear about it and starts to send crates full of candy bars.
What?
And all of a sudden, we're dropping crates full of candy bars out the window for all these people and little kids in East Berlin.
That's so not great.
Eventually, after about 300 days in West Berlin and us bringing all these supplies, we've now built an electrical power plant. We've now built a sewage plant. Do we need anything from East Berlin? We're self-sustainable. So eventually, Stalin sees that we're self-sustainable. We're not going to quit. He says, okay, fine, guys. I'll open the road back up again.
Yay.
And he opens up the road. Yay. Alright, that's the Berlin airlift. Super simple. Okay. Any questions about the Berlin airlift before we do our questions? Okay. Okay, real quick. Say it again. You have a question?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. We see. Number 12, or cross out number 12. I don't like that question. Let's go right to 13. 13. Why did Stalin blockade Berlin for 11 months? Okay. The Soviets cut off Berlin from West Germany through a blockade because they were mad about the creation of a new state. Okay. They were basically upset that the Allied powers came together and made West Germany. Okay. They close off because they're upset about the creation of a new state from the 3 occupied zones. Any questions? Malachi, please put your phone away, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Is Hershey's popular in Berlin now?
I'm not sure. I know they love chocolate. I didn't go to Berlin. I went to Munich.
Oh, I got it.
Yes.
How long did it take to take down the Berlin Wall?
We'll get to that. That's later on. That's 89, correct? Yes. Okay. Second question, number 13. How did the United States respond? What did the United States do after they closed down the roads? For 11 months, the United States flew supplies into West Berlin until Stalin opened the city after the United States refused to quit. Okay. So how did the United States respond? The United States flew supplies into West Berlin until Stalin opened the city. Okay, after you guys have that out, please get out your Chromebooks. We have a simple way to show if we've met the learning goal for the day. We have a simple way to show if we met the learning goal for the day. You guys are going to answer a couple questions. By doing this, I'll be able to see if we are properly comprehending the information.
Yes, sir.
As you guys are answering these questions, I'll be walking around listening to your conversation with your partners as well. I'll be asking some questions to see if you guys are understanding the main goals to help clarify any issues we're having. Okay, let's hope the Wi-Fi works in here. If it doesn't, give it a sec, it'll eventually work, I promise. I'll be walking around right now to make sure we're on the right track. Just 3 questions, 3 quick questions. I expect a couple cents for each. We should not have a one-word answer. When it asks if it's necessary to preserve democracy, you say yes or no, because. Not one-word answers. I'll be walking around to ask questions as well. Okay, make sure we should be talking with our partner, answering these questions, collaborating, making sure we are on the same page. Hey, Mitchell, let me ask you. What do you think would have happened in Berlin if the Americans didn't supply aid to the people of West Berlin after they closed down the roads?
I feel like the people would have just gave up and turned to communists so they could start living better again.
Okay. So you think communism would have spread to West Berlin if they didn't, the United States didn't provide aid with the Berlin airlift?
Yeah.
Okay. Good answer. That's a good answer. We should be collaborating this side of the room. I don't hear any talking. We should be working together.
So what could have happened?
Okay, we should be using academic language here.
I think that was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Diego, let me ask you, sir.
What the Truman Doctrine
How did the Marshall Plan and the Truman Doctrine
The
work
Truman
together?
Doctrine
What the two plans both working together to do? If you don't know, you can phone a friend around you.
It's called unnecessary
Stop
war.
communism. What did each plan do individually to stop communism? How are the two plans different?
And lost American lives. Not necessary.
The Truman Doctrine did what? Provide military and economic aid. Very good. Now, what did the Marshall Plan do?
Necessary protection of the. I think it was just a form of
Oh.
interference.
Yeah,
Okay, think, boys, think. Marshall Plan.
It's not wars.
We're trying to give what to these countries so they're not in a position to follow communism? Supplies?
Providing
Food?
power
Okay,
plant.
okay, that's a little different. We're talking specifically about the plane. That's the Berlin airlift. I think, what exactly did these people?
What do you think the United States chose to provide economic aid through the Marshall Plan?
Okay, take that, take that.
they're building to be better.
Guys, what are we doing over here, boys? We're getting our work done?
Yeah, we're collaborating.
Okay, we're collaborating? Okay, let me ask you guys, do you think that the Marshall Plan was more successful than the Truman Doctrine? How are they different? How are they different? What did Truman Doctrine says? How are they different? Which one sent troops? The Truman Plan, very good. Okay, so what Marshall Plan really did what?
I'm so mad about it. Like,
Luke, do you remember? You could ask for help from the front row here. You could ask for help. So you remember what happened? The Marshall Plan compared to the Truman Doctrine. Oh, he already knows. I've already heard his answer. I want these two guys to figure it out. Look at your notes. You guys have the notes?
I knew it.
Yes,
I knew it.
provides food, machinery, and other materials. Okay, this is where we called up Stalin and said, hey, we're willing to give anybody that is communist countries to help rebuild. And they said no. Okay, understand? You should not be like, boys. Question for you guys. You should put anything. Okay, let me ask you this. If we would not have provided proper aid with the Berlin airlift to the people of West Berlin, what do you think would have happened?
It would have shown their that they needed the communists, and that would have like maybe changed their mindset.
Communists would have taken over?
Maybe it would have formed their own.
Oh man, that's a Scrabble word.
Taken over.
Okay, that's a good answer, guys. I like that. I like that. Okay, does anybody have any questions? Is the Wi-Fi working well? Yeah. Right. Okay, we have a couple minutes left. Make sure we're still talking, we're still working. I'm walking around to answer any questions. Doesn't have to only be about our questions. It could be anything during the lesson.
without like
Give me all
Questions?
This is about
Yes.
So did you end up helping Russia at all?
Helping Russia?
I did that.
I don't believe they took any. I think we helped them prior to the Truman Doctrine Act being signed. We were sending them aid until we basically said we have to stop the spread of communism. After that happened, and they said no to us helping them, we didn't help them after that point. Okay. Mr. Fisher, are you done with your work? Yeah. Turn it in. Ben, you done with your work? Hey Ben, let me ask you a question for you. What were the differences between the Marshall Plan and the Truman Doctrine? I can't hear you, buddy. You got to speak up. Very good. Very good. Okay. Class. Real quick, let's go back and review our learning goal to see if we've met the learning goal today and what we need to do differently. Okay, our learning goal by the end of the lessons, students will apply or will be able to analyze the Truman Doctrine and the Marshall Plan to determine if the policies were in the best interest of preserving democracy. I've walked around while I was doing an informal assessment. I listened to you guys talk. Most of you seem to feel that the Marshall Plan and the Truman Doctrine were not in the best interest of preserving democracy. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay. Why? Why do we think this is not the case? It's okay that you think this. Just tell me, why do we think this?
Can you please repeat?
Kind of none of our business. So you think we shouldn't have involved in other countries' business?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Simone.
I disagree.
Do you think that you disagree that it was in the best interest or it was not in the best interest?
Yeah, because we're helping other countries. Isn't that like a good thing?
Oh, so you think, but do you think it was selfish of us as a capitalist country to intervene in other people's business even though they're kind of handling their own problems?
Yes and no.
Not really, because what if they actually need help?
Oh, that's true. Matthew, yeah, go ahead. Go
He
ahead.
has a point because if you think about it, we don't really need to get into it. But not only that we're helping them, but we can also like build alliances and give them help in the future.
So you're saying we're building people to have our back in the future just in case. Okay, so we have a split room. Okay, so that's why we had those questions. I look forward to reading your guys' responses. We're going to continue tomorrow. We're going to talk about a little about the nuclear side. And as we go forward, we're going to talk about the Korean War and the Vietnam War, and we'll start to see the pattern of American post-war policies. Okay? Any questions before we end?
No, sir.
Okay, the bell's going to ring in about 2 minutes. Great job today, class.
Blackney.
Mr. Blackney.